housekeeping here, and then we'll dive right into today's topic. So always right, with the no fluff, getting right to the action. So thanks for joining today. So I'm going to talk with Chris here. Chris will introduce himself in a second about crafting year-end reporting narratives with AI. And finance and accounting, AI, very interesting topic right now, and just how we can adopt this in a repeatable practice within our process. So looking forward to this topic. And again, if we haven't met, my name is Ben Murray. I was an in-house SaaS CFO, now fractional CFO coach, have an academy, newsletter, podcast to live and breathe SaaS B2B, and now you could say AI B2B finance. So thanks for joining, everybody. And Q&A. So we love to take questions during these sessions. So there's a Q&A box. So ask your questions there, upvote questions that you'd like to answer, and we'll watch those as we progress through the webinar, and then we'll take a bunch of Q&A at the end as well. Let's see what's next. And as a thanks, I'll have a template download, all my forecast models and SaaS metrics templates as a thank you. So appreciate everyone. We got Florida in the house as well. So with that, Chris, I'm going to stop sharing and give you a second to share your screen, and we'll get rolling here.
Sounds great. And should be coming up here shortly.
Yep.
Just thumbs up that you guys see it all right?
Yep. Yeah, looks good.
All right, well, let's jump right into it. And thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to join. I love this webinar series that Ben puts on. Just a quick kind of agenda of what I'm hoping to accomplish today. Talk a little bit about Maxio, why Maxio, why myself, do some introductions, and then talk about how Maxio can kind of help around your financial narratives. And then we're going to spend the bulk of the time doing a demo. I'm going to try to spend most of that time in an AI solution, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude, give you guys best practices, tips, tricks. And then we're also going to spend a little bit of time demystifying MCP. You've probably heard around AI, like a lot of buzz around it. But if you Google, MCP, or you're reading on LinkedIn posts, a lot of that's oriented more towards the development and engineering personas and mindset. I'm going to talk about why it is a game changer, in my opinion, for users like yourself. And then we'll get into some Q&A. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Now, Ben doesn't need an introduction. He did it just for y'all. But myself, I've spent eight years here at Maxio. It's been a fun journey. But what I want you to take away from this slide is that my background is more on the financial operations accounting side. And it's been really fun recently leaning back into the product, helping us innovate from an AI perspective, not just from an internal operations perspective, but actually getting it into the product as well and enabling users like yourself or potential prospects if you're not leveraging Maxio. And that's okay. We're still going to take a lot of these concepts can be used more broadly. So if you're not familiar with Maxio, Maxio is a billing and financial operations platform. We really sit at the hub of between your application, the payment processors, CRMs, and general ledgers. Whether you're on a early stage general ledger like QuickBooks or Xero, or an ERP like NetSuite or Sage Intacct. And then just yesterday, Maxio announced our partnership and future integration with Rillet as well. So pretty cool, exciting news that I'm happy to share with you guys here on today's call as well. But the way we think about Maxio and why we're kind of uniquely positioned to be talking about this and also talking a little bit about AI and how to empower you with AI is there's three main pillars inside of Maxio. It's not just the billing or the recurring revenue recognition around subscriptions or managing contracts. It's those three pillars in conjunction, right? So it's the billing, it's the rev rec, and then it's layering those non-GAAP SaaS metrics that Ben does a phenomenal job kind of talking about and keeping us all up to date on how the market's evolving, right? That's the challenge with some of those SaaS metrics is they're open for interpretation, but basing that on your core GAAP financials, like billing and rev rec, really allows us to layer those insights on auditable and audited financials in most of your use cases. So let's talk, as we continue the introductions, right? Myself, a little bit about Maxio now. Let's talk about some of the best practices for financial narratives. And we talked about kind of year end, right? Then Ben, I think we have a question that would be interesting is, what's the kind of the frequency of you all reporting out to your stakeholders, whether you're doing kind of weekly summaries, monthly summaries, quarterly or annual. I tried to make this a little bit more generic, so it's not just the annual summary. I think the annual summary hopefully is building on your frequent updates. But Ben just launched that poll.
Yep.
Should be able to answer it.
Yeah, I just launched the poll in the chat. So if you want to take a second and so what is your current cadence for financial reporting or narratives to your board or stakeholders? Weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual. And I put other just in case there was some other cadence that we didn't know about. So yeah, let us know here. So I'll tell you, so right now we've got mostly monthly, which makes sense, 27% quarterly and 10% weekly. So no annual, which makes sense. So I guess, Chris, no surprise, monthly, then quarterly, and then weekly.
Yeah, no surprise. I think the only thing that always kind of is interesting is, I see people go through a journey with this, right? Earlier on, it might be more frequent communication, weekly updates, because it's friends, family, angel investors that you're updating, keeping appraised, and then probably, pivot to monthly or quarterly. Hopefully not too many that's just annual, which no surprise there in the data. Right, you want to be sharing often, frequently, and no surprises. Right, that's kind of the big rule, is just making sure that everybody is appraised and there's no surprises going into a board meeting. And that's what today's kind of about, is some of those best practices. So let me go ahead and kind of transition. So there's three kind of core things that you really want to be touching on, and the example that we're going to be using today is more geared towards kind of like a monthly summary that you'd send out. An annual version will just be more in-depth analysis, and we'll talk about some of the ways that you can leverage AI to prepare that. But rooted kind of first and foremost, if you're in a recurring revenue business, which if you're in this audience, you more often than not are, around your ARR or MRR, depending on which kind of metric you lean to, your net revenue retention, gross revenue retention, your bookings versus plan, obviously always correlating it back to budget, right? How did you deliver on what you said you were going to deliver from your prior update? Super important. And then churn analysis, right? Pretty standard stuff, right? The thing that I think is really important is you always want to also provide a forward-looking recap. So yes, it's some kind of a monthly or quarterly or annual recap. But I think the most important thing is the insights. Like, what did you learn from the metrics? What occurred in the business, and what are you doing about it? And that's super important, especially early indicators like pipeline or marketing metrics that are relevant to your business, making sure that you cover those and highlight those. And then obviously always anchor with your 3-statement model, right? So you really should be talking about your true GAAP financials, your P&L, balance sheet, cash flow. If you have any debt financing and debt covenants, is typically you'd see in that financial narrative or monthly summary how you're trending against those. Especially if you're anticipating a round of funding with the same stakeholders or different stakeholders, it tees it up so that there's no surprise in when you might need capital or might be looking to have an additional raise. And then I think the most important thing is just supporting details. Typically, we're talking about the narrative today. Obviously, you're probably going to accompany it with maybe you're doing a monthly board deck or quarterly board deck for those that are doing the quarterly reports. In bold, it's probably a whole separate topic for another day, but for the non-GAAP metrics, your SaaS metrics, probably a metrics policy, like how you're looking at your business. If you're not annotating those directly in the slides or the supporting documents, super important. And then generally some of the financial statements along with it. So obviously best practices. Let's just take a look at a sample narrative, and you'll see why I'm kind of giving this sample narrative here in a second. We're going to go through and kind of use AI to help us generate this and roll it forward, and then we'll incorporate MCP into that workflow. So this one, obviously, you can see it's kind of generic data, sample data. Our fictitious company for today is Weber Inc. Super creative in the naming conventions there. But a general flow, right? Start with the executive summary. As I was talking about, rooting first in your SaaS metrics, because those both kind of blend into what happened and where are you going. So doing a subscription momentum or ARR waterfall, sometimes referred to as ARR snowball. Again, you can pivot all of what I'm talking about to MRR. Not a big deal. It just depends on. Ben does a phenomenal job talking about the content there and which you should really orient towards. But then I think the next important thing is highlights and lowlights. Always advise when you're doing a narrative, don't just sugarcoat it. Don't just highlight the wins and the positive. Have balanced conversations with some of the lowlights. So calling attention to any major churn events or many major contraction events. So your customers are consuming less. Maybe they've downgraded, canceled a product line, etc. So just kind of flows. And then covering, and you'll see in these sample slides, a transition to more of the churn, revenue recognition, accounts receivable collections as well, highlighting any major AR collections issues. Because that's for a lot of SaaS businesses, especially if you're kind of B2B, selling higher dollar amounts, monitoring your accounts receivable balance or your days sales outstanding, super important because it can really influence your cash balance from a month to month or quarter to quarter basis. And then you'll see, each of the bullet points kind of talking about correlating it back to plan, right? So just re-referencing the plan. How are you stacking up? Is this good news, bad news? And then kind of a key takeaway and outlook piece. Again, this is just a generic copy, but I think a lot of us probably are already following a similar format in your emails or whatever your quarterly or monthly cadence is and communicating to the board. And I keep just referencing based on the survey results there. But where does AI come into it? And that's where we're going to pivot in a second. But Ben, I saw you reacting.
Seeing this, guys. So come look at the slide, because I've tried this with ChatGPT 5. Because I help SaaS founders and their clients. My clients with finances and all that stuff. And hey, trying to create a summary. And it is difficult because the data is all over the place, and just a nicely crafted summary versus, hey, here are my 10 reports, go figure it out. This is so important. One thing that comes up, Chris, all the time is when I'm reviewing retention numbers and churn numbers with SaaS founders, it's oh boy, I didn't realize, churn was that high this month. Who are those customers? And it's just, oh, okay, let's go look in the data. So this, a great evolution. We've got all this data. Now let's just make it very distinct, crisp, and so people can see at a glance what's happening in our business. And this goes beyond those standard FP&A variances.
100%, Ben. And I think your email that probably everybody here received yesterday was talking about a future webinar series that you're doing on data integrity. And I think it ties into exactly what you're saying. Where AI is, in my personal opinion, going to drive us, and you're going to see some of that in a second, is the ability to produce this high level analysis and summary and readout is going to become pretty inexpensive. And inexpensive meaning that, pre-AI and what we're going to kind of demo here in a second, this usually took quite a while just to report out on the raw numbers and compare those to budget to actual, right? We talked, if I tab back, right, some of the churn numbers, maybe you're involving customer success here, they're tracking them, they're providing some of the details. Highlights, lowlights, maybe you're farming that out to other individuals in your company. Sales specifically comes to mind, hey, why did we win this deal? We're going to show producing the analysis is going to be pretty, again, inexpensive, but it's that deeper level analysis of what's changing, who are those customers that's driving that churn, and then furthermore, are those customers that are from newer vintages or newer cohorts? Did you just sign those up last year and you're already losing those customers? Or are those customers that have been around for 8-9 years and are finally, getting acquired or going out of business, et cetera? It produce the same metrics, very, very different underlying causes and cause for concern as we talk about the go forward. And I think that's what we need to keep in mind with AI, and what this actually unlocks us to do is to quickly produce this, but then it's going to be drilling in and being able to correlate it back to the data. That's going to be super important.
Yeah, and Chris, one just comment, I interview founders for my podcast, and we talk about fundraising, and what always comes up a lot is investor updates, and just keeping current investors aware, monthly, quarterly. And then sometimes what comes up is when they're looking for that next round, maybe it's the Series A, B, they can preempt that round because the current investors, they know exactly what's going on, and this and we know how busy we are to sit down and actually write this out. Now, of course, we probably maybe edited a bit, all that, but just to have this to keep them updated is just a key theme when I talk to founders.
100%. And I think, Let's jump out of slides. I think the proof's in kind of the actions. Just check here. You guys are able to see Claude in this case.
Yep.
All right, cool. So we're going to jump into Claude. I think AI, it's one of those things that it's incredible, the pace of innovation over the last year and a half, 2 years, and it's changing every single day. Both Anthropic and OpenAI pushed a lot of updates this week. So hopefully it seems like the platform is a little more unstable, especially with ChatGPT 5 rolling out. So I switched over to Claude for the purpose of this demo. But what I kind of want to show you is here's kind of what most people are doing today.
And Chris, one comment. I don't know if you can zoom in just a tad. Yeah, so we can see. Yeah. So yeah, Heenis and Tech. Is that, guys? Does that work? Can you see it better?
Get a little bit better. You can probably go.
Yeah, we got a couple yeses. So yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, guys. Yeah, just let us know. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and so you guys aren't sitting here watching me type. I've got this kind of copied and pasted over, but essentially what I feel like a lot of people's use of AI today is essentially something similar, right? You have already existing use cases where maybe you've created that draft memo that I was showing before. You pull it over, and then you're like, okay, let me go into my GL, whether it's NetSuite or QuickBooks. Let me download the balance sheet, P&L, statement of cash flows. Maybe you've got a 3-statement model and have been using Ben's template and are rolling that forward every month, right? What a lot of people end up doing, though, is just kind of loading these in as inputs. Say, hey, here's what I generated last month. Here's the raw data. Let's go ahead and generate it. The audience being the board of directors, et cetera. And so it's going to go through, simply look at the format based on the instructions here. It's going to generate that August narrative. Now, Claude, if you're not familiar with Claude, it gives you a little bit more of a programming kind of view of the analysis of the data. ChatGPT, same thing. But it's going to go through, analyze the data. And what we should expect to see here in a second is really just a roll forward of that monthly report. And, okay, great. It definitely speeds up rolling it forward. It's like, hey, I want to keep the same format. The consistency is super important as well. That way your stakeholders are like, oh, I just received Ben's monthly update. Like, let me just scroll right to the bottom because he does a great job of, kind of recapping it at the bottom, or it's just a consistent format. So what you're going to see here is it's going to generate my, August summary for this, fictitious business that I've got here. There are waterfall, and then it's following that exact same format because I've preloaded it. Now, this is pretty good. Probably not showing anything new at this point, right? So let me just skip on to, if you're not leveraging projects yet, ChatGPT has the same thing. Projects makes this way, way easier. And I would be remiss if I didn't, first state, obviously, finance audience here, make sure that you're going through the appropriate, channels for your company as far as security. That you generally are only going to want to be doing this on a paid tier or team plan. Maybe your industry or your business requires the enterprise tier. Certainly don't take this to the free version.
Yeah, that comes up a lot in those AI conversations is, the training the data on your data. So yeah, use paid tier. I'd go with the paid tier for sure.
100%. And so what you get with the project functionality, and again, I'm trying to make this more generic and not just highlight Maxio. We're going to kind of wow you here in a second with Maxio and some of the AI, but projects is a great use case for consistency. What's nice about it in ChatGPT, it's the same way. You can provide additional instructions. So if I pop this open, right, it's basically just saying, hey, here's the task, here's what I want to do. Keep the documents, the summaries concise, professional, audiences, the board members, right? I'm going to be loading up the CSVs. It's going to have everything that you need to kind of generate that. And what that allows is to provide a lot less context in the prompt. And then I can still pull over the same kind of source documents for it to reference.
And Chris, are you, one thing like that format, like so important is like, it's that consistent format. It doesn't just create a new one every time. Now, was that just from the prompt or was that from the instructions kind of for the project just to keep that narrative consistent every time?
You can do both. So what's really nice, and this is, I'm glad you kind of asked some questions. I would encourage everybody, not just for your financial narratives, like FP&A finance is kind of this awesome opportunity to implement AI. Because generally we have these reoccurring tasks that are a monthly, quarterly basis that requires, a deeper analysis on data, but still looking for a consistent output. So the direct answer is, Ben, I have it both in my instructions for the project, and then you can still remind it in the chats. The one risk is, like, maybe by accident you open up this project and you start asking it to do a marketing presentation. It might start to deviate a little bit because it's using the context of the chats within its project. I'm sure there's somebody probably more knowledgeable on the AI front than me that can probably comment on that. But generally what I like to do in best practice is just have different projects for those. And then notice I don't have to upload my template. It's already loaded as a project file within that container per se. So then I can just load in the source documents and we should expect kind of a very similar output. Now, the one big caveat is it's not always going to be, 100% exactly as if I had sat there and wrote this from scratch. Yet, in just a quick amount of time, I've already gone through 2 iterations of this. Whereas if I was staring at a blank screen and capturing it and bringing in a bunch of different stakeholders, and it's actually doing something I didn't want it to do yet. Sorry, I forgot to disable something. We'll just back out of that real quick. It'll actually go ahead and just generate that same narrative. It was starting to move into my MCP demo, which I don't want to do yet because of the tools that I have activated. But essentially what it'll do is use that context of the project, should produce the same exact output. One of the perks of like a Claude or a ChatGPT is you can come in and you can actually open up the document itself, and then you can highlight certain things, and you can come in and improve on that language or explain. And then I like Claude's ability to download directly as a PDF. Nice little difference between ChatGPT, and then the ability to download as Markdown. So really nice functionality where you can go in and inspect it. The big unlock, though, and this has really only been over the last 4 or 5 months, both Anthropic and ChatGPT came in with the concept of, then I think we're getting a little feedback on your end.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Let me.
All right. I think we're good there. Well, Anthropic really came out with it, and it feels like an eternity ago. It's kind of like the November 24 timeframe, this concept of MCP, Model Context Protocol. And don't worry, I'm going to jump back into Claude in a second, but I figure I want to bring us all up to speed on MCP. And Will, that folks are definitely excited about MCP.
Yeah.
So MCP, Model Context Protocol, right? A lot of what I'm about to talk about, and this is the big debate, right, is that you could do a lot of what I'm about to show with MCP with the concept of tools. The big challenge, though, and this kind of brings us back to this time last year, right? You had Claude, you had ChatGPT. They weren't really communicating with your critical financial operation systems. So what I just showed you, right, is generally what we were living in last year and for most of this year even, and probably some of you even today, right, where you're having to download the source of the data, kind of scrub it, isolate it down to the context that you really need for the prompt, and then you're uploading it either, as you saw, to the project level or in that individual prompt to perform the action. There was very little communication between those. Then, both OpenAI and Claude came out with the ability to create custom tools if you're on one of their paid plans. The challenge is it's like the early days of APIs. You basically had to build it yourself. So in the event you wanted to connect to Maxio and unlock that billing, RevRac, insights data from Maxio, right, you had to kind of on your end build that tool leveraging Maxio's APIs in order to perform the actions. Challenge, though, as we've all seen, is right. Maxio knows how best to use Maxio. Salesforce knows best how to use Salesforce. And that's where the concept of MCP really starts to come in. And these were kind of called custom tools, really the world that we were living in for a while. What's different with Model Context Protocol is think of it as truly in the definition, it's a protocol. It's a standard way of communicating and publishing and communicating with large language models like a Claude or a ChatGPT. And ultimately, this is a little bit more of a technical diagram. But what's really nice, and I'm showing Maxio at the top, right? We're in phases of an early access of our MCP. Google Drive has one as well. Essentially, Maxio now and Google and others can publish these MCP servers or publish these connectors. And what that allows is the platform provider, the author of that service, really gets to define all of those tools, the prompts, and the context of how best to use it. And so what I would refer in a way to think of it is it's like having a Maxio expert design those tools for you, knowing the use cases that you want to perform, and then building that context. And what's really nice and the big unlock is previously, if we as Maxio were going to accomplish this, or Google, is you'd have to kind of create a bespoke integration or tool set that could be used more broadly. Now, with the concept of an MCP that Anthropic first kind of championed and developed, OpenAI has accompanied that as well. It becomes really, really easy to integrate. And I think Paul just commented, it's basically just an API, 100%. That's a great way of thinking about it. Now, it's a little bit more than that because Maxio is also providing the authentication server, the context. Think of it as like this square over here on the right is a bunch of API endpoints bundled up together and labeled as a tool, right? So it's not just, hey, go create a customer, go create a contract, go create a subscription, now do this action, right? It allows you to perform and bundle up those API endpoints. You'll see some feedback if you jump into the MCP rabbit hole, right? You don't want to just create a wrapper around your API endpoints. There's a lot of technical debate around that, right? We won't do that for this audience from a finance perspective. What I want you to take away from this conversation, though, is the big unlock is, and you've seen it in Claude or ChatGPT, right? If you clicked on the connectors, when they first launched it a couple months ago, there was like 3 available connectors. Then they came out with the ability to load in a custom connector. I do see really most critical applications publishing their own MCP, which will allow you to interface with that provider directly from within ChatGPT and Claude. And in the meantime, right, for providers that haven't really done that yet, Zapier and Workato both doing a great job of kind of creating a wrapper per se, like publishing an MCP for those tools that have yet to, develop their own MCP server. It was, just a month ago, there's maybe like a dozen, there's probably like a couple dozen now providers, and it continues to expand each day. Most of the providers like Maxio, for instance, and I'm about to demo it here in a second, it is in production, but you're going through and building all of the security and compliance around it and the authentication, the penetration testing that our customers have come to know and love and expect. And that's where a lot of the providers probably are in this journey.
And Chris, we're getting a lot of questions coming through right now. I don't know if you want to take a few in the chat.
Yeah, please.
One Elsini, I'm learning a lot here. A lot of this is new to me. And Elsini said, what about the privacy with these MCP servers? Is it more of just how connecting the data and using the data versus MCP servers actually using customers' data to learn?
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I was advocating, make sure that you're on the paid plan, make sure you go through and look at the T's and C's. There's a ton of documentation out more about it.
Yep. And then Anitha asked about Maxio creating its own MCP.
Yes. Yeah. So we currently have an early access program. If you're an existing customer of Maxio, would love to get you access to it. We're going to create a little bit of more formal process around that so that we can kind of test it, document some use cases, and continue to improve upon it. Going back to the original question on the security and compliance, right? For most of them, this is a broad generalization, but if you're on a paid plan, like ChatGPT even does a great job of it in big bold at the bottom. It's like, we do not use any of your inputs to train our large language model. It's only available inside of your team instance. So yes, it's saving it to memory, but it's not being used more broadly. Same with Claude and others. That's why I was stressing. Most companies, depending on your scale and size, like here at Maxio, our InfoSec team has come out with guidance, like here's the approved vendors that we're allowed to use. If you're at the earlier stage and don't have those type of luxuries, you can piggyback off of a lot of larger companies that have been pretty public about what they can and can't use. So definitely a great question to be asking about. Are we still seeing my screen?
Yep, can see it.
So that's kind of demystifying an MCP. Why does it actually matter? I was talking about it a little bit. The big unlock was when Claude and ChatGPT came out with these connectors. So they publish and obviously promote, probably paid a decent amount of money to promote the ones that are standard connectors inside of both of those instances. You can also add in a custom connector. So Maxio, the question that I was already asking is Maxio is producing an MCP server. With the authentication, you authenticate in using your Maxio credentials. And then there are roles that unlock what tools are available. So you can have like an analyst role or a admin or bookkeeper role that actually will allow you to perform some create actions. And I think that is one thing, if I go back to these other slides, that I probably didn't hit on enough, right? Notice the direction of the arrows. It's not just, hey, reach out into Google Drive and pull in this information. You can actually perform create actions. So somebody was bringing up an API, right? API language, you're talking about CRUD, create, read, update, delete functionality. You can build that same functionality into an MCP now. So we're not going to, do a whole, hey, this is Maxio's MCP demo, but some really cool documented use cases that we're publishing as Maxio is the ability to upload a contract and say, hey, here's my signed agreement. Go ahead and create this inside of Maxio. It parses the information from the PDF, goes, creates the customer, the contract, the subscription record. So some phenomenal functionality. And that's why I think, broadly speaking, as we're thinking about in terms of finance and accounting, how do we leverage AI? This is going to be a big game changer for you. So it's building on that concept of the projects. So here you would come in, you'd add in Maxio, you'd add in the generated instance URL that Maxio would provide. Most MCPs that you're going to see allow the same configuration. And then if you look at the bottom in this example,
Chris, could you zoom in again? We just had I don't know if this is a slide maybe, but
it is. Hang on, let me see if I can.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Josh was asking if
no, it's full screen slide. So
those were the okay. And while we're here, there's a question like, can we share the slides after?
Yeah, no objection to that. And in fact, if you even want to use the instructions or the prompts I was leveraging, happy to get that over to Ben and we'll get that out to y'all. You could use that as a base guideline for generating those narratives. Happy to do that.
Okay, perfect. I'll work on getting the slides out to everybody. So thanks. Yeah. And yeah, Michelle's like that'd be great. And the prompts. So perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is kind of hard to see. This is essentially all just narrate what we're looking at here. It's in the depths of Claude and ChatGPT. It's the same thing. You can go in and again the paid plan. So as an admin, I can add organization connectors or I can add in my own custom connectors. Think of this as like essentially what will become an app store. Salesforce was phenomenal. I think a lot of us probably have experience with Salesforce, the app exchange, right? The ability to go in and download. Maxio publishes an app in Salesforce for the app exchange. NetSuite, to use another example, has similar functionality with suite apps. Essentially, an MCP will become the way that you build these connectors for AI. And that's going to be where things are really going to get pretty interesting. So let's jump back into this example and, fingers crossed that Claude holds up on me here. And let's come into this MCP project. All right. If we need to, I can fall back to some earlier examples, but I'm trying to kind of showcase what this looks like. And bear with me one second. When I had to restart the internet, lost some stuff.
Yeah, we're still looking at the slide.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me try again. Let's share the entire screen. All right, are we back?
It's coming up now. Yep. Okay, we got Claude back. Yep.
All right, sweet. And let's zoom in again, and we'll go ahead and hide this left bar. So we're kind of back where we left off, minus the example where it was already starting to kind of use some of the functionality. What I forgot to turn off is down here, there's some connectors. and it'll show kind of your options of what you want to do. Let me refresh this real quick. Should be seeing, yeah, there we go. And Quirks of Claude, ChatGPT does the same thing. Needed to do a browser refresh. But what's really interesting is we'll see both the Zapier MCP and the Maxio MCP connected. What's kind of neat is then I can go in and see the tools that are enabled. So in this case, I provisioned it with an analyst role only. So we're seeing a couple of those tools where it's going to query Maxio, list all of my reports that are already out there, and then be able to actually run those reports real time, return the results, and craft the narrative from it. If all goes well, then we're actually going to talk about Zapier. We'll fetch some additional sales analysis from Google that I've just teed up, and then we can actually trigger the sending of the email all from within Claude, assuming that the live demo goes well. So here, all I really need to do is say, hey, prepare the financial narrative for the board, stakeholders, list all the relevant reports in Maxio and go ahead and run those. And let's get off to the races. So I'll go ahead and trigger this action. And then what we're going to see is it's, thinking. It's now going to use and understand that, okay, I need Maxio. And this is where the context piece comes into play, right? We published something called the Maxio About. It's understanding how to leverage the tools that are enabled at its disposal. And now it's actually going in and finding the reports. And what's pretty neat is you can actually go in and see kind of the response. So this is more of a technical approach, but you can look in and see, okay, there's Weber Inc. It's pulling a bunch of different reports, the contract summary, my ARR waterfall, my day sales outstanding. It's first listing those reports, and then it's going to sit here and actually go through and generate those reports. What's super neat about this is, let me see if I can pull it over, because this, it's not instantaneous. It's probably going to take 4 or 5 minutes, right? But just remind yourself, even though we want instantaneous with AI now, if you were starting from scratch to write this narrative, probably looking at blocking off like 30 minutes if you're super efficient. When I was sending these, it was probably an hour exercise. So 4 or 5 minutes,
at least,
not bad. Yeah. So let's come over. Are you guys able to see Maxio now?
Let's see. Yep. Maxio's up.
Yeah. So this is kind of a screen that even our customers don't really surface much, but I wanted to show it because what you'll actually see is it's a report history kind of viewer. And you can see that the MCP server is actually querying that instance of Maxio, running these reports, and going to return the results inside of Claude. Now, why that's super important is really the value here is that Maxio has all of the, think of it as like SQL logic or complex logic to do all of your ARR calculations. Now, Maxio can do some unique things of like if a customer churns out in the quarter and then comes back a quarter later, if you're reflecting on an annual basis, do you just kind of net those two events out, or do you count it as a lost logo and a new logo? There's a ton of calculations and settings. If you were just returning the raw kind of database of all of the movements of transactions, it's far too much context for an LLM to digest. So the fact that it's actually going and running those reports, then returning the results into Claude, we're going to get a much more efficient summary. And so you can see this real time. It's going through, running those reports, pulling a payment summary report, pulling my AR aging report. And let's just jump in and take a look at like one of the reports while it's going through the process. Right inside of Maxio, Ben, you were asking like, hey, I really want to be able to drill in. You can come in and do things like the ending ARR for August. You can come in and, in this demo instance, we're using flames to indicate, ICP fit, right? Obviously, really good thing that, 5 flame accounts are making up most of the ending ARR. Still have some customers here that aren't great fits. And as we talked about, like churn is not always churn. If I'm losing customers that are 1 flame or snowflakes, like I'm not going to be fighting to win those customers back tomorrow. Very different articulation than if it was super important. And what you can then do further is actually drill into the ending customer balances, come in and actually, drill in even further and inspect the results.
Hey, Chris, a couple relevant questions here if you want to take 2 questions.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So Josh asked, do you have to tell it what reports to look at, or does it know?
You can do both, right? So you can in your project, and that's why I was leveraging a project, is I was kind of saying like, hey, use these certain reports. So you could say use these reports with this nomenclature. You can give it actual report IDs, or if I navigate back to Claude here, right? Then it already finished. Let me cancel out this, right? It's actually going to go through and show you the thought process of what it's doing. So it first queried my Maxio instance, found all of the accounts, and then based on my prompt, it's like, okay, well, I need information for the August narrative. Here's the reports that fit that bill. And this is the answer of like, hey, if I didn't define the reports I wanted to run, if I want to get really exact and I want the same output every single time, maybe in my project settings and in the instructions, I give it specific report IDs. So it's always going to run those. And that's essentially what it was doing. It found the list of reports. And then if I actually go down and look at the generate, right, it's going to go ahead and request that regenerate this report. And then it's returning those results. From there, what it did is it generated our narrative, right? And now what's really cool and the big unlock and why I'm so excited about this is I can go in further and say, now let's pull my win-loss analysis from Google Drive and incorporate that into this report or recap. All right. And think about this if this was Salesforce. This is like, I mean, some of the things that we're doing internally, I wish I could kind of just pull up like what I'm doing. I can't, but you can actually come in and I'll go ahead and stop that.
And then while that's running,
yeah.
Anita, does Maxio have its own custom reports, or does the company provide reports?
So we have standard reports that are like kind of report types. So there's the subscription momentum report, which is that ARR kind of waterfall that I was showing. There's day sales outstanding, top invoices, AR aging reports. So we provide a ton of out-of-the-box reports. We kind of refer to those as one-click reports. So as soon as you get provisioned inside of Maxio, you load in some of your historical data, leveraging Maxio for billing, you can go and you're off to the races. You can then go in and build your own reports, just like any of the other solutions that you're probably familiar with. You can go and configure it. And what it's returning, though, is the report specific to your instance, your business. And that's why everything here is Weber Inc. Weber Inc. is an instance of Maxio, and it's pulling that in. So, Zapier is a little interesting, probably some of the configuration. It did find the document, but it wasn't able to parse in all of the requirements. That's okay, not ideal in the live demo. But what you can do, though, is like if you said like there is a key logo, you could actually have it go and pull in that context or that information from Salesforce. Right. Let's go ahead and stop this because it looks like Zapier's having a little bit of trouble on that one. But let's kind of summarize it here. And let's do, because we did like that summary. So let's do this. Zapier's MCP will send me the email. So now what's pretty sweet is I could go in, I could open up that document, I could improve it and make edits into it and say, okay, great, love it. Let's ship it. So I'll go ahead and ship it.
Yeah, and I think this is what's so exciting. If we think about, all right, we close the books, we've got the data, and to then just run a couple processes where in 10 minutes I have my full reporting package, and you can have a faster meeting, faster reviews is just, that's what I'm excited about with this, versus waiting to the end of the month or mid-month to have reviews and just having reviews when the data is really fresh.
100%. And the thing to keep in mind too is I'm demoing this inside of Claude. There's a lot of companies out there that we serve that have like Claude Enterprise instances or OpenAI Enterprise instances. So this is allowing you to meet the users where they are, fully incorporating this inside of Maxio as well, right? So you can actually go in and scrub the data, identify anomalies. I think, Ben, when you and I were connecting, one of the prompts that I use is like, hey, look broadly across Maxio, surface any things that are out of whack, right? Like customers that have really old outstanding balances, maybe some test data or demo data. Maybe an engineer was kind of tweaking the pricing and packaging and created some test customers for $1, right? Like, how do I surface that? It could actually flag that for you. And then, yeah, this is perfect. So you can, with the MCP, always ask it when it's doing create actions to prompt you. So I'm going to allow it to send that email, and then I'll drag it over here in a second so we can look at it. But we're incorporating this inside of the Maxio core UI as well. And I think the tying back to your next kind of follow-up webinar is the data hygiene. You can see where this goes. If your exec team, your stakeholders have access to this type of data, you quickly find yourself into a continuous close process. You can't necessarily restrict and curate the data, which is a downside to this, but I think ultimately it benefits everybody, is getting into that continuous close cycle. And what becomes super important is the data hygiene, right? Because you're going so deep in the analysis, if the data hygiene isn't there, like we were talking about those ICP scores, okay, customers that don't have an ICP score, don't have a churn reason, or don't have win-loss analysis, you're going to get kind of pushed down a different path, in an insights path, than really what the data validates. So data hygiene, data integrity becomes of the utmost importance. We see now leveraging the Zapier MCP all within the same thread. It's actually sent that email, and we can take a look at what this one was, the one from an hour ago, but it'll do. This is the one that, are you guys able to see this?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So I was using a fake email, but I sent it to myself, and it basically provides the HTML formatted recap summary in pretty clear format. So now this is me going through and talking us through the whole process, but you can imagine you get this down. You could even in the project settings say, like, here's the HTML format, or if you want to use plain text, you could say, hey, in the voice and tone of Ben, or in the voice and tone of Chris, right? You can quickly produce this type of summary. And then you get into, and that's kind of neat as well. It's given kind of, where is the data coming from, as part of that prompt. So that's kind of the full workflow. And hopefully what you guys are seeing here is like all of that noise around MCP. What does it actually mean? And where are we kind of going? And what I want you to also take away is you can use this concept for so many different business functions. When people are talking about agentic AI workflows, yeah, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, well, I got to go and buy, an agentic solution to do that. If your existing providers are innovating around AI like Maxio is, they're going to be producing an MCP server. And those are the types of things that are really allow you to unlock these agentic type workflows directly inside of Claude natively or in ChatGPT natively. And then, of course, as I mentioned, most providers like Maxio are going to be embedding that inside of Maxio itself. So, we're doing pretty well on time. I know we've been taking some Q&A. That was bulk of the content. So I don't know if anybody else has some questions. Hopefully, you guys found this insightful.
Yeah, boy, I learned a lot, and he also gives me a lot of ideas just of the stuff I do in reporting. So yeah, if any questions, just post in chat or in the Q&A. And then also, Chris, if they have questions for you about specific things here, how can they follow up with Maxio directly?
Yeah, let me see. I can put my email here. Would love to dialogue with you all directly. Obviously, no fluff webinar. We're jumping right into the content here. But obviously, if you are really interested in leveraging Maxio from a billing, RevRec, and insights perspective, would love to talk to you. We didn't really highlight a ton of the functionality inside of Maxio, which pains me because I love it, use it every single day. But if I was in your shoes, this is exactly the kind of the content and structure that I would take time out of my day to attend.
Yeah, and then hey, Michelle repeat attendee on these webinars, appreciate it. And she said, yeah, big Maxio fan. Then let's see, there could be Anita says, yeah, in ChatGPT, create a Word document, modify them. Yeah. So yeah, like you said, setting up, I use projects in ChatGPT. It just, just helps with that. And and Sarfraz, yeah, just joined. Will we have access to the recording? Yes, it will go out. Once it processes, a recording will go out. I will also post the slides and any prompts that Chris wants to share in my No Fluff course series, where we post the replays and additional content. So if you're on my newsletter, you'll see an email for that in the Academy. So let's see. Janet says, in Maxio, can you currently upload the contract to analyze and set up automatically, or is that available later for existing customers?
Janet, if you're an existing customer, and I'll follow up with you after the webinar, yes, would love to get you in an early access, and participate there. Maxio also recently acquired a CPQ company, RevOps.io, have integrated that in. So there's a lot we can talk about there, just even moving a lot of that approval workflow upstream to the deal and have that auto process. But if you're leveraging a different provider, yes, that is something that we're looking to broadly enable before the end of the year here for everybody. But would love to talk with you directly on it.
Yeah, I wish I could steal some of this, put it right into my process. So yeah, Chris learned a ton here. Yeah, and I think everyone did as well. So again, the replay will go out. I'll get the slides in my No Fluff replay series. But yeah, and Chris's email is in the chat, so feel free to reach out to Chris. And then I also have my template bundle. If you'd like to download that, that's in the chat right next to Chris's email. Let's see. So Janet says, thank you, loved it. Paul, thank you, Chris. Super helpful. Anitha, yes, thanks. Fabulous webinar. Oh, yeah. Lauren Pace says, I'm also a current Maxio customer and would like to connect. So yeah, chris.weber@maxio.com. So email Chris with that. So Chris, any final closing thoughts here before we wrap up?
The final thought I would say AI is changing a lot. I would try to embrace it. It's tough to stay up to date with all the latest and greatest. But I think it's one of those areas that we all need to be kind of leaning into and evaluating and understanding how we can use it, because it's a huge unlock to get your time back to spend it on the most valuable task, right? I was kind of cruising through. Here's the readout. What's missing is still your input. You know the business. You know the ins and outs. You know the changes that you made in that prior period and how those are affecting the numbers that are reported out. So it's really elevating the CFO community, the finance community, to be more of a storyteller and looking out of that forward-looking direction versus just reporting on the past. And that's why I'm really so passionate about what's going on with AI today.
Yeah, it is. It's changing so fast. And Chris, you were the first one who introduced MCPs to me. I was like, wait, what the heck is that? So yeah. So good stuff. All right. Well, guys, appreciate the time today. I know everyone's super busy. And you have Chris's email. Look for the replay. I'll get everything over to No Fluff so you can have the slides and some of the prompts. And then, Liz, so sounds good. All right, Chris, we'll appreciate it. And we'll see you on a future webinar.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.